national heroes on the radio station, on the college shows. A day for Barrow sparking big debate. Is he a true hero? The question of late, my opinion. Shouldn't get a day. Shouldn't be given that treatment out here. Cause whosoever responsible for the linen up at the hospital, oh, them ain't get a day. Brand new elevator up there, and it outside lifting the grass I hear. Oh, them ain't get a day. The man who brought in the container, a condition unit and enough liquor, oh, he ain't get a day. I wonder how much money they stole. That people up there still on payroll. Oh, them ain't get a day. People from the town and the country planning to stop a big hotel. And it cost this country 3.3 million. Well, Cow getting 1.5 million because he ain't get a contract and nobody got a day for that. That's why I say we must know who our heroes are. We must hail them from near and from far. We must know famous from notorious. That is a must here in Barbados. This nation was not built by our leaders alone. So many heroes out there are unknown. But I can't support the idea to pull a roll Barrow down from our history book. It is fair. Leave a roll Barrow there. Barbados! Right there. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. National heroes, their contribution. We must credit those for the work they have done. Party persuasion, I suspect. Causing tunnel vision and lack of respect. No. Let's not be that way. Come on, Bajans. Let's not be unfair. Cause two run away and come back to sue retail. One gone again, the next get pale. Oh, them ain't get a day. They're bold to show this beautiful country looking colonial like in 1940. Oh, them ain't get a day. The wrong approach they adopt about hey. Come telling me all about child care. Oh, them ain't get a day. Pursue support sexual activity that's going on up at Glenderry. Oh, I know them want a day. I thought it was over, but I was misled. Look, she sued NCF instead. And she ain't get a day for raising the dead. Somebody gave a man under Miss Miller more money than the Prime Minister, and that party didn't get honor. That's why I say we must know who our heroes are. And we must hail them from near and from far. We must know famous from notorious. That is a must here in Barbados. This nation was not built by our leaders alone. So many heroes out there are unknown. But I can't support the idea to pull a roll Barrow down from our history book. It is fair. Leave a roll Barrow there. Right there. Come on, bitches, you gotta know. Yeah. heroes we see, but we keep forgetting that this country got enough heroin. I know that all won't be recognized, but some are right there in front of the eyes. Come on, visions. Let us get busy. Know the people who contributed greatly. They got road in the potholes up by me, and they went and patched the road recently. Oh, them ain't get a day. I spend money to make music yearly. Pirates make more money than me. Oh, them ain't get a day. Liz, she getting minister pay. She pick up garbage a whole damn day. Oh, she ain't get a day. When I watch my news at 7 o'clock, I don't hear Queen's Park, I just hear Queen's Park. Oh, them ain't get a day. You told all the people how he is a great hero. Hero. Father of independence, Cyril Walton Barrow. Now you come back and tell them, no, that is not so. Not so, not so. You confusing the children, they don't know their heroes no more. For the children's sake, we must know who our heroes are. And we must hail them from near and from far. We must not say much from notorious. That is a must here in Barbados. This nation was not built by our leaders alone. So many heroes out there are unknown. But I can't support the idea to pull Errol Barrow down from our history book. It is fair. Leave Errol Barrow there. Right there. I'm telling you. Yeah, Barbados. We got to know. Oh, yeah. We got to know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he say how the Robin Reed, oh, them ain't get a day. They say how Edwin can win this time, but he needs something greater than peace sign. Oh, them ain't get a day. They don't want to be called Kaisonian, but they want to wear my Calypso crown. Oh, them ain't get a day. They're singing R&B, funk and disco. Come out here calling it Kaiso. Oh, them ain't get a day. Politics in this thing like health, but not a fella in driving my herself. Oh, them ain't get a day.
You know, people ask me all the time, why do you do this? Why do you not retire and read books and write fancy academic papers? And I say, yes, that is also important. But what is more important is that I was given an opportunity to read books in the first place, to engage with ideas because of the sacrifices of ordinary people. And so part of scholarship must be given back to the people in the form of public engagement. I see myself as a public scholar, what we call an activist scholar or a scholar activist, who's always trying to use the knowledge that is gained from reading books, from observing people in their communities, in their society. and giving them back, in the words of a UC Kwayana, giving them back to the people as a political nourishment and by extension, cultural nourishment. That's what I'm about. It's about being that public scholar whose work is not just confined to the classroom, but that classroom is extended to the public space. I'm David Adams.
I want to tell you that some of the marchers were a very tender age, children of 8, 9, 10, and 12. Give them a special hand. At the other end of the pole, there were people like me, over 60, some a little more feeble than I, but brave at heart. And in the middle were the souls of the earth, those in their prime, who are custodians of all the energy of the revolution, which we have to fight for our freedom and well-being. Our program this afternoon is simple. The Patriotic Coalition called this march to get the people to take part in a fight to better our own conditions, the conditions of the people, to better these conditions in various ways. The coalition was formed because of the denial of the right to vote. And the right to vote does not mean going into a ballot place and scratching a paper. It also means the right to have those votes honestly counted. Today is the anniversary of Sharpeville, the day when they shot down scores of people in South Africa at the place of that name, representing an extreme form of denial of human rights. There the struggle took a very bloody form of repression. It is not because our struggle here is not very bloody, except for a few selective assassinations and work of bandits, it is not because of that that we also do not suffer denials. And today is a day of denial, not only a day when we look at our denials, but a day when we have taken a long step to turning back these denials. And what is beautiful about this step, it is a step taken not by leaders, but by people, men and women, working together. Because one of the things we are denied in Guyana is official respect for the rights of women. They talk a lot about emancipation of women. They are willing to say that. But when a woman wants to be defended against the ravages of some mad beast, there is no official sanction. Such people are promoted. Briefly then, we are denied the means of life. We are denied the right to vote. We are denied the right to a living wage and to decent conditions of life. And I'm sure the speakers will be talking about this living wage. You know that the scandalous offer at present made to the TUC is $19.40 a day after 127% devaluation. And along the march, we are denied the right to take part, like intelligent people, men and women all over Guyana, in deciding the future of this country. And the speakers will spell out for you the fact that the Patriotic Coalition for Democracy has taken a big step to tell the president that we are not going to be left out much longer. And your performance here today is backing up that step.
Good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. On a Friday night, we came in there with the voice and the image of Brother A.U.C. Kwayana speaking there in 1987 at Kitty Market Square. It was the culmination of a march from Buxton to Kitty, 1987. I was there. In fact, I was one of the chief organizers of that march in 1987. Brother A.U.C. Kwayana, Baba A.U.C. Kwayana, Elder A.U.C. Kwayana, speaking there in 1987 at Kitty Market Square. Today, April 4th, 2025, he is celebrating, observing his 100th anniversary. Birth anniversary, his 100th birthday. 70 and 70, 10 plus 70. 100 today. Guyana, the Caribbean, the Pan-African world. Salute Brother A.U.C. Kwayana on turning 100. So many people have turned 100. Kwayana is special. As the WPA said in its tribute, Kwayana is Guyana's unique gift to itself and to the world. We join with him, his family, his party, his beloved Buxton in saluting him. So many of us have been touched by the sage of Buxton, one of his godsons, Brother Orrin Newton. So many godsons and sons and daughters, so many who he has mentored. They are all over the world today, joining in saluting Guyana's Black Gandhi, as some people say, Guyana's Renaissance man, the man who they say was put in jail in 1953 by the British governor. And yet the British governor was seeing this man in his house. So the legend goes. The man who the legend says has powers beyond the rest of us. People like Guyana come once in several generations. God has given all of us tremendous gifts. Each of us tremendous gifts. But some people, he gave all the gifts. A.U.C. Guyana, political activist, writer, journalist, poet, playwright, educator, name it. He has been part of it. Folklorist. One of his books is called Gang Gang, 35 African Proverbs. The man who was born, Sidney King, April 4, 1925, at Lusignan, on the Lusignan Sugar Estate. And his family moved from Lusignan to Buxton, and Buxton became his homeland. The rest of the Africans on the Lusignan estate moved to Annandale South. They called themselves Congo people. Guyana is a Congo. The man who opened up the pathways for us to be proud of our African self. He led the way by changing his name from Sidney King to A.U.C. Guyana, which in Swahili means Black Man of Guyana. Today, we name our children African names. Nobody laughs at us anymore, thanks to Guyana. The man who wrote the party song for the PNC, the PPP, and the WPA. The man who gave Guyana its republic name, the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Yes, Guyana is the author. The man who, under the first PNC government, was in charge of the Guyana Marketing Corporation, was in charge of the National Insurance Scheme, getting it going, was chairman of the committee that made recommendations for the formation of the Cooperative Bank, the man who was chairman of the Land Reform Committee, the man who helped to form the legendary Yoruba singers, encouraging the young Ascrians, as they were called, to form that band. The man who, when Guyana became independent, the PNC came to power, went as a personal emissary of Forbes Burnham to Africa, visited 13 countries to introduce the PNC government to the Africans. He took with him the first collection from Guyana to the freedom fighters fighting against apartheid in Rhodesia and South Africa, 20 pounds, which was collected at Tipperary Hall in Buxton. Guyana's first contribution. The man who influenced our foreign policy towards Africa. A.U.C. Guyana today turns 100. In our bifurcated society where our two major political leaders have become the fathers of the nation, and sometimes because of that, we know very little of the contributions of others. Guyana was there. In 1950, when the PPP was formed, Jagan as legislative leader, Burnham as chairman, Janet Jagan as general secretary, he, Guyana, was the Assistant General Secretary. When we got self-government in 1953 and had our first election, and the PPP was elected to office, there were 6 ministers. Kwayana was one. He was the Minister of Works. And when the white governor attempted to interfere with his ministry, he told him, I will not stand for this confounded nonsense. Guyanese have since changed that to this confounded nonsense must stop. The man who did not go with Burnham during the split in 1955 stayed with Jagan, but with split from Jagan in 1956 after Jagan refused to take Guyana into the West Indies Federation. He then joined the PNC, became first a vice chairman, then became general secretary and editor of New Nation, the man who organized the first PNC groups in Guyana. He would fall out with the PNC and he would form the African Society for Racial Equality and would propose the first power sharing proposal in Guyana, joint premiership between Dr. Jagan and Burnham. He would later found and form the African Society for Cultural Relations with Independent Africa, ASCRIA, in 1964, the first Black Power organization in the English-speaking Caribbean. That is the man who has turned 100 today and who we salute. Tomorrow, his family and his larger political and cultural family will gather in Buxton at the Buxton Ball Field from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., where they will pay tribute to Brother AUC. The man who founded County High School, later became known as the Republic Cooperative High School, and so many people whose parents couldn't pay for them to go to school when they're free. It was the County High School where three students passed Swahili at GCE under the tutorship of AUC Kwayana. The man who wrote the play Promised Land, which won a national prize. Promised Land is the story of the ex-enslaved people buying the village of Buxton. The man who wrote over 10 books and hundreds of articles, Brother AUC Kwayana. We salute him today on his day. May he live for another 100 years. He's the last of the founding fathers and mothers of our independence movement. As they say, the rest have gone to the great beyond. He still stands tall and is very much alive. He's going to be there in Buxton tomorrow as they celebrate him. Guyana is richer for the presence, the contributions of AUC Kwayana, formerly Sydney King, Teacher Sydney. And so tonight we dedicate this program to him, one of the true giants of our beloved Guyana. if I forgot to mention anything, and I'm sure I have forgotten so many things that he would have done for and in our country. The man who was known for fasting, sitting in front of the governor office in 1964 as Africans were being killed during the disturbance. And he went on a fast and sat in front of the governor's house to draw attention to the murdering of African people during the disturbance. And he has done so many fasts throughout his life. The man who became a member of the Indian National Congress, an Indian Guyanese organization that was advocating for the independence of India long before he became a member of any African organization. He was a member of the Indian National Congress. He would be proud of me for mentioning that. You see, Guyana, we love you. So many of us, I can tell you, prominent lawyer, young lawyer today, E.U.C. Anderson, his father was a Guyanite, and his father named him after the great E.U.C. Guyana. Thank God for having men and people of that quality walking in our midst. As they say, we don't produce saints, but the person that comes closest in our public life to being a saint is Guyana. I've known Guyana for 51 years closely, as a close comrade. I've known him all my life, but as a close comrade for 51 years. I never cursed in front of him. The first time I take a shot of liquor in front of him was when I was in my 30s or 40s. We would go to wakes together. Me and my brother George would accompany him to wake, and we would be singing upstairs, and we would go downstairs, take our tooks, and come back up. Never drank in front of him until one night in Washington, D.C. was visiting, and we said, we got to stop this and let me try. And we take a shot in front of him, and he throw back and laugh. He said, you all forget that liquor smells? So when you all were going downstairs and coming back upstairs and smelling liquor, he a quality human being. Let me bring in my guest tonight, Dr. Vincent Adams and Brother Wayne Caesar of Over to You. Wayne is from Plaisance, and Dr. Adams is from where? Christiansburg.
Christiansburg.
Christiansburg. Don't sell in then.
Don't sell in.
Christiansburg. Brothers, as we salute Guyana today, any thoughts? I'll start with you, Vincent.
Well, you know, I grew up as a little kid. My one wish is to meet that great man sometimes, and of course, listening to you, and I knew what a great person he is, but never knew all of those facts that you brought out here tonight. What a tribute! You know, I tell you, and it might have been just over a year ago. I received a call from this great man, and I could not believe. I thought it was somebody playing a prank on me. it was such an honor. He called me, and I think he's in Atlanta. He called me and told me that he follows my writing, and he's so impressed. And we talked for a while, and it was always. And I told him I wish I would really like to see him, for us to chat one day. But it was such a I mean I thought it was a dream, Dr. Hines and Wayne, that that somebody of Israel could be calling a lesser being such as myself, and that's where I regard myself in comparison to him. He is without question one of the great icons of Guyana, a distinguished gentleman, and of course you there's no question that you know him almost better than anybody else.
Yes, thank you. And that story you tell there, even to this day, he doesn't. His sight is not as good as it used to be, and he doesn't read, but he listens to everything. And if he hears somebody saying something interesting, he would ask us to tell him who that person is, and we'll try to get their number to call them and to talk to them. He's that person, that kind of person is constantly learning. To this day, we take turns to read things to him, and um, people take turns to write. And he would sit there and he would write his letters by speaking them, write his articles by speaking them, and you know, clear clarity of thought. But yes, he is that kind of person who would call you if he thinks that you are making a contribution.
And
Yes, go ahead.
what struck me even more than anything else, and in the conversation, and we spent, it must have been like an hour. It was a long, we just talked, and of course, I mean, my skin was just growing. I couldn't believe it. Just the wisdom, and and I even asked. I said, Chief, well, how old are you? And when he told me, I could not believe, because I knew that he had to have been an older person, but his intellect was so intact that I said cannot be the same person. He has to have been in his 90s in my mind. And when I asked him and he told me, I could not believe it. I think around that time he was like 98. So I could not believe it, because he was as intellectually capable. He had a sound mind, and to carry on that conversation. It was just unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Wayne Caesar, you are of a much younger generation. Go
Yes.
right ahead.
Good evening,
Yes.
Dr. Hines, Dr. Adams, all our listeners and viewers. Yes, Dr. Hines, I am much younger, but I have been fortunate to have heard my father and my uncles speak, you know, politics, and the great man's name always came up. Baba UC Kwayana. Look, when I did some research on this gentleman, and Dr. Hines, you're correct. The list is so long. But what I admire is the healthy and extensive body of work that aligns itself with UC Kwayana. He's contributed immensely when it came to education, writing, poetry, and journalism. And another thing that really stood out is that at the age of 15, at the age of 15, I am playing around climbing trees. We playing cricket in the pasture. We're doing all these type of things. This gentleman was a primary school teacher at the age of 15. What responsibility? Okay. And like Dr. Adams would have so eloquently said, he has put him in a different bracket. When he spoke of being able to chat and talk with Baba UC Kwayana, you know, he really stood out in the political arena. He was a giant, he is a giant amongst men when he was active in the political arena. He didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. You know, today you look and you have a lot of talking, but no walking. And, you know, I really admire that about UC Quayana. He acted on what he said. He was a man, he is a man of his word, you know, and that is something that we are missing today. So I am happy, Dr. Hines, that you invited me here on his birthday. UC Quayana will always be in the bowels of Guyana's history. And the date, April 4th, 1925, should be etched in every Guyanese mind because, oh, it's a blessed day. Okay? It's a day that a Guyanese hero was born. Look, you do not have to be a president or a prime minister to have power. UC Quayana, okay, he is a man of power and he contributed equally when you look at past presidents and past prime ministers and their body of work, and you look at his body of work, there is no difference. Thank you, Dr. Hines. Now over to you.
Thank you, Wayne. And you know that example that you talk about there, that his life is an example to the rest of us. Um, Walter Rodney wanted to dedicate one of his books to Quayana, and he said he didn't know what to write. There was so much to say about Quayana. In the end, he settled for this, dedicated to AUC Quayana for his example. For his example, you know. Um,
Dr. Hines, you know, I forgot you mentioned something there that jogged my memory. I forgot about that County High School. I remember County High School.
yes, yes,
I had forgotten about that. You're right.
yes, yes. So many people passed through there. So many
Yeah.
people. Some of the first staff at the cooperative bank came from County High School because Quayana is an economist. He has a master's in economics. He did all by correspondence. He never went to a university. He never went to high school, as Brother Wayne reminds us. But he's such a great intellect. Um, and so he taught economics, he taught Spanish, he taught Swahili, he taught everything at that school. um, just one of those persons. Um, April 4th is happens to be important for another reason. It was the day in 1968 that a great Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm.
was assassinated at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, not too far from where Brother Vincent is.
Yeah. Well, a little ways, but it's the same state.
Yes, that's what I
Yeah,
mean.
but yeah, but yeah. When like when my I bring that up all the time. In with my colleagues. My American colleagues sometimes, and we talk about like when we talk about various cities. Well, I said the only thing I normally remember Memphis for, jokingly, of course, is and sometimes to take a dig at some that is the assassination of one of America's greats. Yep, it's
Yes,
enough. Yep, but matter of fact, I even when I came here, when I came to Tennessee, my one of my first trips to see was to go to Memphis to see, just to I guess to get that feel of what it felt like going and seeing where that great man was assassinated. That was a very, very memorable visit. on my part.
Memorable visit. Good evening to you in case you're just joining us. It's Politics 101 on a Friday night. My guests tonight are, as usual, Dr. Vincent Adams and Wayne Caesar. Wayne hosts a program on 107.1 FM on Saturday nights, and I'm sure so many of you here will tune into that program. Brothers, let's just shift gears and talk a little bit about the ongoing politics in our society. I think we have to start. We have to start at the point of the coalition. This past week, Diana got the news that the AFC and the PNC have not agreed to a coalition. On the 1st of August, as both of you may remember, at Buxton, we invited both Mr. Norton and Mr. Hughes. And I took the liberty of calling them both on stage and raising their hands and doing a Bob Marley to signal to our people that all is well. That was 8 months ago. And to some extent, I feel at a personal level a sense of betrayal, because I thought that they had gotten the message, the thunderous response to that gesture at Buxton. And then that picture went viral. And that 8 months later, the two leaders have not agreed. Is somebody hearing? One of the poems I did as a young man was a poem by Lassana Kwesi, a little known poet from Trinidad. He was a member of the National Joint Action Committee led by Geddes Granger. And the poem said, we have to hear with the ears of the people. We have to think with the minds of the people. We have to see with the eyes of the people. We have to march with the feet of the people. And I suppose what we are hearing is not what the people want, but what the parties want. And parties are important because, you know, parties have to represent members. But one gets the feeling that the party is being substituted for the people. But that is my personal disappointment. But you don't have to share my view. Let me start by asking you your thoughts on the impasse, this impasse between the PNC and the AFC. Let me start with you, Doc.
Well, for full disclosure, of course, you know, I'm an executive of the AFC. However, I'm not you know, part of the negotiation team. I was the member of the one of the three main members of the negotiation team in 2020, but I'm not now. So what I'm going to say here, I speak for myself. Whatever I say here is not on behalf of the AFC. I am not speaking on behalf of the AFC. But I think I cannot walk away from expressing how discouraged I am personally. I mean, there's no question that the people of Guyana are yearning for a change. Even within the PPP strongholds, you can see what is happening. When Mr. Azardine, for example, goes in there and they're even committing violence against the man, this is the PPP supporters. People are yearning for a change. And so I think it's it's incumbent of beholding upon these two parties. The only way that we can get a change is a coalition between the next two bigger parties, which is the PNCR and the AFC. Now, I say that I'm discouraged, and this has nothing to do with again speaking on behalf of the AFC, because I'm not going to say anything here that is not already in the news. Um, what discourages me is that that both parties have dug in, and I personally do not see any hope that they're going to change their positions. Of course, we know what the two sticking points are. The presidential candidate, the AFC is saying that it has to be, of course, the leader Nigel Hughes has said he's willing to remove himself, but he wants to go with a consensus candidate. And of course, on the PNCR side, they made it very clear, even at their Congress, that it has to be R.B. Norton. And if he doesn't want to, then he could decide to step back and give it to somebody, but they have to come from the PNCR. So that position is clear. So, but no, neither side are shifting. And I don't see any, to be honest, I do not see any hope or any way that those positions will shift. And then, of course, the other position, the other sticking point is holder of the list. The ratio and stuff, that's easy. That's the easy part of it. I don't even think that the ratio really matters. I think that's an easy 6 to 4 or whatever the number is. The issue is the presidential candidate. That is the main issue, and of course, the holder of the list. And both parties have decided that they're not budging, and I don't see any way, unless maybe you might perform a miracle, Dr. Hines, and get them to the point. And that's what's discouraging to me. I to be blunt, I'm saying that the public, the public is kind of hoping, and every day they're hoping and wishing that there's going to be some movement. I don't see any movement, and I think that the party should decide here, rather than dragging the public along as if there's any hope for anything, we might as well decide. Both parties might as well decide, hey, something, we cannot come to an agreement, and go to whatever the plan B is. Because I don't say, I hate to say it, and again, I'm not speaking for the AFC. I'm only one executive of the AFC. This here is my personal opinion, that we're stuck, and I don't see any way of getting out, of getting or moving from where we are right now.
For full disclosure, as everybody knows, I am the presidential candidate of the Working People's Alliance. I am part of the WPA's negotiating team, and we have been meeting with the PNC over the last few months. And we chose to start our talks with the PNC discussing coalition platform, coalition policies, coalition strategy, coalition tactics. We deliberately did not start with the presidential candidacy. We did not start with the distribution of spoils, because we felt that would come out of an agreement on a joint vision, a joint program, a joint policies, joint tactics, joint strategy. And then out of that would come the distribution of the spoils. We, however, are not seen as a major opposition party. The press, the media do not see us that way. The influencers do not see it that way. The international community doesn't see it that way. True, a lot of people on the ground, I understand, I'm not in Guyana all the time, but people stop our people. But I get a lot of communication daily on this program and other program a lot of people feel that the WPA should be at the table. In fact, 2 nights ago, there was almost a fight on the program here because I took a moderate position, and people were almost angry with me for not wanting to be at the table. It is not that I don't want to be at the table, the WPA doesn't want to be at the table, but we have not been called to that table. As we said, we have been having our own discussions. I don't want to call it negotiations. Our own discussions with the PNC. And like I said, for full disclosure, that is where we are. Brother Wayne, your thoughts?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hines. So for me, I am not bounded by any party. I am bounded by the people of Guyana. My program is about the people of Guyana. My voice and my activism is, representative of the people of Guyana. So when I speak on their behalf. It's disappointing that it's the 4th of April and we do not have a coalition in place. We would have called for talks to have started right after the biannual Congress of the PNCR and the AFC. And we keep getting feedback, particularly from the AFC side of leadership, that we have time. Okay? We have time. And this is exactly what I was afraid of. This is exactly what the Guyanese people was afraid of. And Dr. Hines, to your point that you make earlier, when we talk about the narrative of a coalition, okay, the narrative of the coalition stand in line with the PNCR, the AFC, and the WPA. The WPA is a relevant party. Okay, it's a very relevant party. Yes, some of the big media entities may not speak as much about the WPA, but you ask the regular man or woman on the ground, there's a lot of people, you understand me, who aligns with the vision of the WPA, that fighting vision, that representational vision. Okay, so I believe, Dr. Hines, that it is necessary that you sit at that table. Yes, we're talking about the presidency, but like I would have said to you earlier, and I would have said on programs before, that you are one of the critical elements, okay, in formulating this coalition. You are that buffer, okay, that's going to pull everything. You're the glue that's going to pull everything together. So it is important that you, Dr. Hines, be at that table. We know that the WPA is not contesting for the presidential seat, but it doesn't dismiss you from being in those negotiations. Okay, so I would hope that that would change. I would hope that this impasse would cease and everybody would come back to the table, because it would not look good, especially for the AFC. I must say, particularly for the AFC, it will not look good, because the AFC have called and would have said many times, we have time. Well, it is proven that, we didn't have time. And if the talks had started right after the biannual congresses, we probably would have had a coalition in place by the end of 2024. And on the matter of a consensus candidate, I'm going to say it again. I don't believe in men making up bed for another man, or men setting up the table for another man to come and sit at the head of the table. Okay, we have 3 competent leaders at the top of the 3 parties that I would have just mentioned. What happened? Goat didn't bite y'all, Dr. Hines. Goat did not bite y'all. So as of right now, at least from my perspective, I am not agreeing on any consensus candidate. And when we talk about the presidency and the list, okay, the larger party is going to have the edge with that. They're going to have the edge with that. They deserve, basically, because they're bringing more to the table, they deserve the presidency unless they so choose to pass on that position to one of the other parties. They also deserve to be the leaders of the list. because of what they're bringing to the table. But if we're going to argue over the leader of the list, then the list could become something that is in the hands of someone that is independent and unbiased. I rest my case. So now, Dr. Hines, over to you.
Dr. Hines,
yes, go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead, Vincent.
you know, again, listen, we need to, which is, we've said this over and over, and I don't think anybody would disagree. We need to, and in life or in any plan, you need to look at what your objective is. And our objective is to win the next election, to have a new government in place in the interest of not ourselves, in the interest of our wonderful nation and its people. So, but we tearing down each other instead of, let me tell you something, both Aubrey Norton and Nigel Hughes are capable of leading this country. And what when I hear the narrative that Aubrey is somehow incapable, that I think that it's unjust, and without any validation as to why, whatever criteria some people are using, it's unfair because Aubrey has, I mean, he's earned his stripes. He's been around politics, for a very long time. He's highly qualified, experienced, and he's, the guy he's not corrupt without question. Mr. Hughes, of course, we all know Mr. He's also highly qualified and competent. So I do not like when, especially people in the opposition, try to paint Mr. Norton as being, not capable or unfit. Now and then we say then I normally bring them to the example. Politics are, look in the United States. How many people said that Donald Trump? People are convinced Donald Trump is not capable. His own people, that same Rubio said he's the biggest con artist there was. What what's the name of the other guy? His vice president? His vice president said that he was America's Hitler. And guess what? They all circle the wagon. You would never know that these people said the things that they said about Donald Trump. They circled the wagon and he became president. So why can't we do the same thing in looking at what the objective is? There's always political jargon and everybody's gonna have their political say to make the other party look bad. But it is time, and let me tell you that, well, we do not have a whole lot of time to campaign, Dr. Hines. If the PPP announced the election today, I think it's only 3 months that they've got to give you, a 3 months notice. We are not even prepared right now as to whether, how are we going to go? We're going to campaign together, and if they declare the elections tomorrow and said it's going to be in 3 months, where are we going to be? We should have been prepared, already hitting the ground and knowing exactly when we plan our strategy as a coalition, as far as I'm concerned. But, I'm tired and I'm sick of hearing this narrative somehow that one of the candidates is not capable and is unfit. That is grossly unfair. There's nothing to prove that. Nothing to prove that. And I think so. We need to, whether it's Aubrey or whether it's Nigel, we need to do it very fast and stop this. Everybody is just digging in and not thinking about what's the future. And the other thing is, if both parties decide that they're not shifting, well, let the people know, okay, we've tried, and let's move on. Let's move on to whatever is the strategy. But rather than have people hoping and expecting and you're on pins and needles every day, you're looking for a story, and it's going to make things worse.
Right.
So
Dr. Hines.
Yes,
Dr.
Wayne,
Hines.
something on that issue, Wayne, the issue of Mr. Norton being unfit. I share Vincent's heartfelt view on that matter for obvious reasons. But you go ahead, Wayne.
No, and Dr. Hines, I totally agree with Dr. Adams on that. After being in the YSM and spending over 50 years of your life in a party in different positions, at one time, Mr. Norton could have been presidential candidate before he stepped aside for is it Winston Murray? Yes, I think the guy's name is Winston Murray. Mr. Norton stepped aside and allow Winston Murray to be that presidential candidate. You know, the guy has a solid and good body of work. He doesn't come in with any baggage, you know. And listen, I don't understand. You know, people talk a lot of things. You know, people talk a lot of things. President should have looks and president should have all these type of things. No, man, it's what's in your heart, man. And if it is in your heart and you have the appetite to serve the Guyanese people, then why not? If you have a sitting president now in Guyana, although installed with 19 fraud charges, you know, amongst other things, Mr. Norton does not bring that type of baggage to the table. And on a personal note, you know, just to add a little more, I have had a few conversations with Mr. Norton, man, and whenever I call that guy phone, he picks up, man, and he speaks to me. You know, that says a lot. I believe sometimes in the public, people, you know, they complain that they don't see him enough and these type of things. I think that's one of the big complaints. And when it comes to protesting and stuff like that, well, we had 2 protests on the Square of the Revolution of late, okay, that he agreed to. Okay, so it says a lot. It says that he listens to the people. The people had an issue with protest. Okay, they approached him about having 2 protests out on the Square of the Revolution with regards to our system LML. And he agreed to both of them to go ahead, and he was present. So I think it kind of puts that to rest. But I agree with what Dr. Adams said. We need to get a presidential candidate. We need to start rallying around that candidate. We need to start preparing, not even preparing, we need to have a message and a vision of where this coalition is going to take the Guyanese people. That we need to go there and impart upon the people, empower them, educate them, and get them ready for elections. We have work to do, Dr. Hines and Dr. Adams. There is no time to waste. Okay, the time for a formulation of a coalition is right now. It's like yesterday. So these guys need to get back to the table, and we need to get this done. There's no walking away now. Okay, the AFC, if they don't watch out, they're going to cease to be a party because they're the party that's been holding it up somewhat. Okay, and to now come and say we're going to go it alone, that's taking the people, the Guyanese people, through peaks and valleys. And you know Guyanese are already, they're only going to take so much. Okay, the AFC is a viable party. They need to come to the table. And this decision needs to be made. Again, I must say, kudos to the WPA. They made their position known early. Okay? And people are going to gravitate to the WPA. They are. Over to you, Dr. Hines.
Vincent, you and I have been hearing this narrative, and you know we've been talking about it from time to time, that the solution to our problem is to have a minority government with a third party in between. And on the surface, it's an attractive proposition. But do you really think, do you think that in our context, that will lead to the desired outcome that our people want on both sides of the political divide? Bearing in mind that between 2011 and 2015, we had such a minority government. And the needle, we didn't move the needle. But your thoughts on the whole notion of the minority government?
No, I am not. Um, I look, the government is badly in need of good governance. We know what is going to happen. You have three parties in there. There's going to be wheeling and dealing, or it'll just be a log jam, not getting anything done and not doing what is right. We need to put our vision on the table. We need to put our core principles on the table, and it's a bright dividing line between what the PPP has and what the opposition has. Okay, the PPP is for the rich, no question. That's where the all money is going, and the opposition is on the other side for the poor folks, for the small man. So, but when you start getting this third party coming in, and then there's a minority government, and it's that to me that's not benefiting the government unless you get lucky that third party is also going to go along with what is right for the country. But normally what you normally see, it's what's best for them. They're going to be wheeling and dealing, they're going to want positions and all kinds of stuff. But I prefer the line to be drawn very clearly, that with two big parties going in, the opposition, and I would hope that the opposition would be APNU, including, of course, I kept saying the PNCR because they're the bigger party, but of course the WPA is also a key part of that whole equation. So APNU and the AFC, I think that is the best chance, and the people are looking for something like that. As a matter of fact, I would wish that all of the other parties come on board and form one opposition bloc. That would be the ideal situation, that all of the other interests, because I'm sure that they all are not in agreement with what is going on in Guyana, because of course, what we got is to develop, just it's for the rich. It's to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. That is exactly what's going on. How could we have, Dr. Hines and Wayne, how could we have a country? I saw last week the latest ranking with the GDPs of countries in the world. Do you know what our GDP is? 91,000 US dollars per capita. Do you know who we're in front of? We're number 8. Do you know who's number 9? The United States of America. We have a higher GDP per capita than the United States of America, of 91,000 US dollars per day, per capita. But half of the population, close to 6%, is living on $5 per day. Now, how do you explain that major disparity? It's in governance, and that's what we need to change. Half of the people or more than half of the people are in poverty, and the opposition should be for poverty, to make sure that people are brought out of poverty. And the other party is, of course, we know they've demonstrated who they are. And that's what we need to do, Dr. Hine, draw that line as to, and say, hey, no compromise. This is where we stand. This is where you stand. And let's take it to the people. The third party thing, if it so happens, then it happens. If, let's say, Mr. Azardine jumps in by himself, that, of course, you got to deal with it. But I would prefer that we just have two options.
Dr. Vincent Adams here and Wayne Caesar. Tonight we are talking about the state of opposition politics. All of us are hopeful, even though the news that we got this week is not encouraging. But we live to fight another day. We live to fight another day. Brothers, we got the shocking revelation just a few days after the American Secretary of State visited our country that the promised tariffs from the American government, that we are a major victim, that there is a 10% across the board tariff for all countries. And then we are hit with a further 38% tariff. Guyanese recoiled at that news. I think there are two questions that are being raised. One is, after our government has almost given America everything that they want, America in turn slaps us with these tariffs. And the second response is what effect these tariffs are going to have on our fragile non-oil economy, because oil and gold and bauxite are exempted. But I want to ask you this first question, Vincent. Are tariffs an effective economic tool in 2025?
It's not, Dr. Hines. It's not an economic tool in any year or any era. I mean, I look at it. I'm not an economist, but I look at the economists. There's not a single one, including by the way, including top economists in the Trump administration that used to say something totally opposite before they got into the administration, and now just to go along with Donald Trump, because this here has been Donald Trump's fantasy going way back. Some people said going way back in the 80s.
It is,
fantasizing. He said is the best word in the dictionary and all kinds of stuff. So, but this is how the guy operates. He doesn't put any thought into anything. He fantasizes that he wants to be, everybody. He's the man. I'm the man. I'm going to shake up the world. It doesn't matter what happens. So he goes out and he starts. You remember how this thing started? The tariff was to stop drugs. That was the first farcical nonsense, was to stop drugs coming from Canada and Mexico. Then when they push back and then you see that wasn't getting any traction, it's suddenly coming, okay, he's going to shake up the entire rest of the world. Could you believe on that list, Dr. Hines? I don't know if you guys looked at that list. The list had a bunch of little countries or islands that does not even have a single human being, and still had a 10%, tariff. But here, so it had no intellectual way of how he came up with it, no economic type of a model or anything. All they did, they looked at the percentage of the deficit between the two countries. For instance, Guyana, when they looked at how much Guyana was exporting compared to how much Guyana was importing from the US, and the difference was 76%. And they divided by 2. I mean, had no basis, no technical basis, no logic, no economic, principle or anything. So what happens to Guyana, why it became so high, is because of the oil. Because oil, they counted, remember, a lot of our export going to the US, because Exxon is sending its oil to its refineries, etc., and even ours are probably going to the US. So that's what made the big difference. Now, so after they did all of this, and of course, I'm sure the lobbyists were showing up at the White House, and then the next day they come and say, well, okay, we are exempting oil. So I am hoping, I think there is still hope, and I think Jagio mentioned it in his press conference, that they're probably going to go back and have a conversation with them. So if they remove the oil from it, if they remove the oil and go back and do the calculations, if they remove the oil from the equation and go back and do the calculation, we're going to drop way down in terms of the tariff. Or they might say, well, okay, the tariff is what it is, the 38%, but it's not the oil export, but it might stay for everything else. I don't know, agriculture and whatever else that is not exempted. But in any case, Doctor, it will hurt. It will hurt. And if you notice, most of the tariffs, the highest tariffs are against the poor countries. It's against the poor country because those are like Asia, those Asian countries, those are the countries where a lot of products come into the United States from those countries. They don't have any buying power, but they manufacture stuff cheap. It comes to the United States and people buy. So that's why that deficit, the poor countries have a bigger deficit with the United States. So that's it, disadvantage. So to get back to your question, it's absolutely it there's no benefit to it whatsoever, and we're seeing it already. And if you don't believe me and all the big economists, look at the Wall Street Journal, the most conservative newspaper outlet in the whole map, probably the whole world, and been beating the daylights out of this thought for since it came up. The Wall Street Journal of our places and all the top conservative economists. So Dr. Hines, it's we're in a bad shape here, and it's really going to impact even you look at what the stock market has done with people who've got their entire retirement. People have retired and their 401ks are in the stock market. I mean, we're heading for some dangerous times here, Dr. Hines and Wayne.
Win?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Adams. Yes, and Dr. Hines. When we look at the tariffs, I agree with Dr. Adams. There is no economic benefit with the tariff, but what my analysis is telling me is that these tariffs are going to be used as a negotiating tool. Okay? Because the US doesn't like they don't like the exchange. They feel like if and this is based on what Trump and his team is saying, they feel like if they've been robbed for the last 70 years. And Dr. Adams is right with this whole tariff and how it's calculated and everything and who is issued, whether it's 10%, whether it's 36, 34%, whatever it is. It's a general concept he's using. Okay? There's no realness to what he is saying. Okay, they're just putting out some numbers there, and like Dr. Adams say, across the board, there are some countries that don't, some landmass that don't even have people existing, but there's a 10%, there's a 10% tariff. So it just tells you about this president that was elected in the United States. But what this has done essentially, okay, it has hurt people tremendously. It has hurt investors tremendously, and I don't mind getting personal. I have lost a lot of money. I have lost a lot of money. But when you're young, Dr. Adams and Dr. Hines, there is still time for recovery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But think about people that are thinking about retiring next month, next year. This can trouble them tremendously if there's not a quick turnaround. It's basically like Donald Trump and Elon Musk with these tariffs amongst everything, amongst the firing of the federal workers and other things, have literally just walked into people retirement accounts and is just taking back everything that they would have earned, taking out a chunk of it. And this only benefits the rich. Okay. And I'm going to navigate back to Guyana. That's why we need parties like the WPA and the PNC, in particular, these two parties. They are very, very, very people-centric. So I would say kudos to the people of Guyana when it comes to the WPA and the PNC.
And Dr. Hines, because it's already, for example, rum is a big major export of ours.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna get hit hard because we've got the best rum. The El Dorado 15 has been ranked the #1 rum in the world for ages now. So that's gonna be some serious trouble. Just like how Canada took the U.S. rum off their shelf, their alcohol off their shelves. So those are the kinds of things. Guyana is going to be hit, and Wayne touched on something there because it's a double whammy. Here you have hundreds of thousands of federal workers who are out of a job. Well, I used to be a federal worker. Guess where our 401 is invested? The majority of people put their investment in the stock market, in the Standard and Poor 500. That's where it's at. So I bet you that most of those people have now, those who were forced out, they swear that they've got money that they can live on, and then right between the eyes, they got hit with a double whammy. You're out of a job, so you're not earning income anymore. You're relying on that savings, and boom, your savings just evaporating in front of you. So that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, brothers, we can't go tonight
And
without
Dr.
making.
Hines, Dr.
Let's go
Hines,
ahead.
when
Go ahead.
when people are desperate, Dr. Hines, you see, there's a thing that is scary. You know, these leaders, they just think that they can do whatever they want to people. Okay, when people are desperate, they take desperate measures. You know, I'm just saying they take desperate measures, and people's lives and all these things can be at risk because it hurts for someone to work all their life and put together a savings, and is leaning on that savings when they retire. And then somebody who is already rich, because when you look at Elon Musk, this guy who's standing beside Trump in the White House, and how rich this man is. When you look at Trump, yes, Trump is not as rich as he used to be, but these guys have it all. And to just come and wipe the retirement account of a small man, is that fair? I am going to still stick with what my vision tells me. The masses are going to one day turn against these leaders, and it's not going to be nice. Over to you, Dr. Hines.
Dr. Hines, I love this comment here. Under the PPP, Guyana's major export is cocaine.
Brothers, I think there's a big lesson here. And that big lesson is that ultimately countries look after their own national interests.
That's exactly, yes. Yep.
And the political prostitution of the PPP is laid bare here. One can't blame the PPP for the American tariffs, but what we can blame the PPP for, and what we ought to blame the PPP for, is that they are not advancing Guyana's national interests. They're advancing PPP's interests.
Absolutely.
And in the process of doing that, are prepared to lay Guyana bare and naked. And at the end of the day, America is going to be sympathetic to us. America is going to help us to defend ourselves against Venezuela. But all of that is going to be done within the context of America's national interests.
Yep.
We are small countries. We do not have the same leverage to throw around our national interests in that way. But it does not mean that we must not have a minimum threshold and say we are prepared to bend over. We are prepared to make concessions. But this is our bottom line. And what you're hearing from this PPP, there's no bottom line. You're hearing from mere motley a bottom line. You're hearing from the former Trinidadian leader a bottom line.
Yep.
What we have not heard from Guyana is a bottom line. This PPP government. And I think so when something like this happens, they're unprepared because they so naively believe that America's support of them is universal and that America is going to sacrifice its own national interests for them. How stupid can you be? And you look at Mr. Wiseman yesterday on his press conference. He's deflated and he's shamed because often America. No, look, America says when it comes to our national interests, we ain't got friends. We ain't got friends. And I think this is the large lesson. We can't blame the PPP for the tariffs. But what we have to blame the PPP for is not recognizing that you cannot give away, as old people would say, give away your ass to shit through your ribs. You can't do that. And that's what they've done. They've given away Guyana's ass, so to speak, and have gotten us in this thing. Tariffs have come down. We don't know what to do. My brothers, our time.
Quickly, Doctor, and before you're done, just to continue what you're saying, and then you hear Nandalal with this foolishness. The one thing that American leadership understands, its strength. They do not respect whims. Okay,
that's right.
And Mia Motley and the Trinidad Prime Minister, the former Trinidad Prime Minister, they stood up. Look, Cuba has supported us for decades since we became a country, as a matter of fact, in the, with our medical support, etc. And they could not come out and say exactly what Mia and the Prime Minister said. Nandalal said yesterday, I could not believe such foolishness. Or when 2 days ago, Nandalal used, we've had 3 visits by senior diplomats to the United States within such a short period of time. So that endorses our governance of the country. That's what that man says. So that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of fecklessness that we're dealing. I'm not saying that you go fight the US. We need them as a companion, as a partner. But the one thing that the United States understands is, is at least show some strength and, not just go along and like a wimp. And I believe that's what's happening. The United States is not going to have respect for that type of a behavior, but that's how they be. By the way, and to put in that, I believe that they believe that by paying this $50,000 for a lobbying company, somehow that has even emboldened them. $50,000 per month of the taxpayers' money to a U.S. lobbying company, and I believe that has now emboldened them to believe that, you know what, we're powerful and almighty.
We're powerful.
Dr. Hines, I want to make this point because you spoke of bottom line. Okay, how can it be possible that we can get a bottom line from the PPP when the U.S. government has so much dirt on them? You understand me? They are in no position, okay, to speak back or to say that they are not accepting a deal. You see, and that's the problem with Guyana. We need pertinent leaders who doesn't have baggage, who when they walk into these press conferences can say, look, man, this deal that you've given here to me, I cannot take this to the Guyanese people. The PPP cannot do that. And look, over the history of time, the US have always done this, where they find these compromised leaders, and because they have intel on them, not good intel, bad intel on them, they are able to use them, to extract resources from smaller nations, right? And by the time they are finished, those nations are economically deflated. Okay, so we have to be careful in Guyana. That's why this upcoming elections is very, very, very critical.
Very, very critical. Very, very critical. Brothers, I want you all to use your closing thoughts. Are we going to have a broad coalition, including the AFC, the PNC, the WPA, and others? Wayne?
Dr. Hines, my expectation is that we have a broad coalition. It's better for Guyana. Okay, it's about time that the Guyanese people experience some measure of prosperity. Having a third party in there is a trap because you don't know where that third party is going to vote. It is not certain where that third party is going to vote. We need to have a collective coalition to get rid of this PPPC government because there's lots of work to do when it comes to Guyana. Okay, we need to revisit our constitution. We also need to deal with the Guyana Elections Commission, because it is my belief, okay, that democracy is not being displayed in Guyana right now. It looks as if the Guyana Elections Commission has single-handedly hijacked democracy from the people of Guyana, especially with this last ruling from the acting Chief Justice. I don't believe that it is fair that that body gets away, okay, with not doing anything regarding strengthening the electoral apparatus after what would have occurred in 2020. But it is appearing to me more and more that they are going to walk scot-free. And it is disappointing, because on the side of the opposition, there are many prominent lawyers. And I beg to ask the question, where are the cases? Where are the cases? GCOM should have been taken to court over and over, not on one instance, on many, because they have wronged the Guyanese people on many fronts. They have disenfranchised the Guyanese people. And like I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, I believe that the majority of people that are sitting at GCOM should be fired. And I await to see what a new government will do about this. Okay? But in summary, we need to have a collective coalition so that we can make some decisions. Okay? And sometimes some of these decisions will have to be unilateral. Okay? Because of what the PPP has done to Guyana. And again, I would call for a lot of these politicians sitting in government right now to be comprehensively audited. Because, listen, I am a public accountant, and there's no way that these guys can have the wealth that they have on the government salary that they are making in Guyana. Okay? They have ripped the people of Guyana off, and we need to recapture the assets and the wealth that belongs to the people of Guyana and put it in the right places. Thank you for having me tonight, Dr. Hines.
You're welcome, Dr. Adams.
Well, you know, in the context of a broad coalition, you know, of course, the AFC and the APNU have to lead the way in any broad coalition. And I hate to say it right now, Dr. Hines and Wayne, I hate to say it, but I've got to be brutally honest. Again, I do not speak for the AFC, but just from my opinion, based on everything that I've seen so far, and all of that is even in the news, in public domain, everything that I've seen so far, I do not have a whole lot of hope that it will ever happen. Maybe there's a miracle that can make it happen, and it's my wish to have that broad coalition, and most of Guyana's wish, as a matter of fact, I would expect to have that broad coalition. But disappointingly, I do not see it happening, Dr. Hines. I see this thing being dragged out, and the next thing you know, elections are going to call, and we are not prepared with a common strategy. That is my biggest fear. So, to get back to answer your question, no, I do not see it happening, Dr. Hines. But maybe you can perform the miracle and make it happen.
Dr. Vincent Adams, Brother Wayne Caesar here tonight. Dr. Adams has said it. It's up to the leaders. Please make a liar of Dr. Adams. The ball is in your court. Even if neither of the two leaders is watching, I'm sure their supporters, their followers, their advisors are watching. And the sentiments expressed here on this program by my two guests, but also, and more importantly, sentiment expressed by this over 1,300 people live watching this program is not what our leaders want to hear from their people. Listen to your people. When you are in doubt, as they say in cricket, Dr. Adams, when you're in doubt, what do you do?
Stay out.
Push out.
Push out when you don't
Push.
push out. That's right.
When you're in doubt, push out. When you all are in doubt, Brother Aubrey, Brother Nigel, look to your people. Maybe that's where the wisdom is. The wisdom, the party and its leadership cannot be the substitute for the people. If all of us leaders vote, we won't get 1,000th of a seat. But if all of our people, half of our people, decide not to vote, we goose cook. For all the quarrel about who should be presidential this and 40-60, it's the people. I am not saying our people are always right. But insofar as they're wrong because we have not given them enough confidence to be quote unquote right. I think in this instance, our people are right. He who feels it knows it. You're not their house, you don't know where you leak. And the last one I will leave you all with. Stone their bottom river, in an old sun at. Our leaders are at the bottom of the river. They have no idea how sun at. Stone their bottom river, in an old sun at. The people are in the sun, and they know how hot is it from this PPP. Get out, my brother leaders and sister leaders, from bottom the river and come up and feel how hot the sun is. My brothers, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Dr. Hines.
And we go out with happy birthday to Brother UC Guyana tomorrow in Buxton from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And for those of you who are not in Guyana or who are far away from Buxton, they will be streaming it live. So look out from 3 o'clock tomorrow, Guyana time, New York time, East Coast time, until 8 o'clock. We will be celebrating Brother UC's 100th anniversary. We'll be back here on Monday night for another edition of Politics 101. We hope good sense prevail and good tidings are brought to us by Monday.